G'day everyone, we're back here for another episode of TopSport Market Watch, where we've got one notable omission from the episode today. We've got Mr. Jimmy Smith frolicking over in the United States. I don't know if when he comes back he's going to be a broadcaster on his Twitter profile or a photographer, because geez, we've had a lot of pictures from the last couple of weeks. He was lucky enough to be at the SoFi Stadium where there was a shootout on the ground there between the Chargers and the Steelers. So we're going to do our best. We've got one of the usual suspects, Gerard Condon. We've got myself in the chair trying to host this thing. Jimmy's provided me with a lot of notes. He sent me all the notes to get everything up and running today. He said, hit the big red button and mention Jimmy Smith a lot. That's all I've been given. So we're going to do our best today. And we've got one very special guest, Australian cricketer at number 400, Brad Haddin, who's looking to take over Jimmy's spot on this show. So it's a big audition for him today. So looking forward to the chat today. We're going to talk cricket, NFL, horse racing. So g'day guys, welcome. And how's everyone going?
Morning, gentlemen. Yes, big welcome to Brad. Lovely to have you here, and I'm sure it's been a quiet week in cricket, so there probably won't be much to talk about there. But what about Jimmy, Tristan? I mean, here we are for the last 12 months doing a podcast every week, and if he happens to nominate a bet that gets beat, his mobile all of a sudden is out of service and we can't find him anywhere for days. Here he is in the US, whining and dining at one of the best stadiums in the world, and we're getting photos and messages every 15 minutes. It's amazing how all of a sudden it changes.
The signal must be pretty good over in America. I reckon he might have an American SIM card in that phone.
Well, and the other good thing that we need to warm Brad up about is that with Jimmy away, we all of a sudden landed 2 from 2 on the horses last week. Jimmy's on a plane. He can't bet. Hopefully he got a look at the coverage afterwards. We picked up $530 for the charity kitty, and Jimmy lands and goes, oh, my goodness, I didn't have a bet.
Very, very good result. We've got 1,760 in the kitty now for passing on clothing. So great result. And looking forward to seeing if we can find another couple of winners today. And we'll throw now to Brad. Brad, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on board. And how's the week been? As Gerard said, very quiet week in the cricket world.
Hey, boys, thanks for having me. It's interesting you're talking about Jimmy Smith slowing things down. I just come up on the side here. He just said, just make sure you're only in for one show. I'm back in a couple of weeks' time. So he's not nervous about it at all. Mate, cricket, it's been a really slow week, hasn't it? In cricket, we've made the front pages of every paper around the country. We've got Ashes teams that have been picked. We've got to find a captain and a vice captain. We've had Tim Payne's interesting week. We've had the boards to in and throw in. So there's a lot of saying he said, no, I said, who's going to take the blame? But it's been an interesting week in cricket, but we've been on the front pages, which is good.
Hey, Brad, isn't it interesting the Barmy Army all of a sudden have found their voice this week? I mean, they've had all sorts of problems over in England in the weeks leading up to this with, all of the background issues, and we've hardly heard a squeak from them, but all of a sudden they've found their voice and they're singing and writing new songs.
Mate, I tell you, one of the great things about the Theatre of an Ashes campaign is actually the Barmy Army. I remember playing in a series and they had a song about Mitchell Johnson, and I couldn't get it out of my head when I was batting with him. He's looking me in the eye saying, Hads, we've got to move this game forward. We're in a tough situation. And all I could think about is he swings it to the left, he swings it to the right. So, mate, they'll have some pretty good songs for the boys coming out this summer, and Tim Payne will be at top of their list now.
Yeah, well, on that, Brad, so put your selector's cap on. Do you think Tim starts the first test of the Gabba?
If Tim Payne's fit to go, I'm picking him in the first test. He's come off a pretty serious surgery on the disc in his neck. The only thing to me I'm worried about, has he played enough cricket? He's got a second 11 game. He's playing this week. But it's a different beast going into an Ashes campaign with no cricket. But the best judge of that is going to be Tim Payne. He's 37 years old. He knows how important an Ashes cricket is. We've got a couple of really good replacements behind him in Carey and Inglis fighting for his spot. So if he's fit, I'm still picking Tim Payne. But if he's not fit and he feels he hasn't got enough cricket, I think he'll make that decision without the selectors stepping in.
So, Brad, who do you think they end up going with as captain and vice captain?
Well, straight to the point there. This is what I like. I think Paddy Cummins has been groomed for it for some time. I think everything about him is a class. He's a class act. He's a world-class performer. He performs in the big moments in Test cricket. Mate, he's got a really good head on his shoulder. He understands the game. The only thing against him is he hasn't done much captaining, and he's a bowler, and that can be hard work. But I think they'll go with Paddy, and I actually think they'll bring Steve Smith back into a leadership role. I think he's served his time now. I think he'll come in as vice captain, which I think would be a really smart move, because with your fast bowlers, you don't know if they're going to pull up sore or they're going to get injured through the series. So in such a big event, you need an experienced captain to step in at short notice. So I think Steve Smith will suit that. So I think they'll go Paddy as captain and Steve Smith as vice.
I think that's a really important point as well. Like I think it's one of those ones where, you know, obviously Steve had his issues there a few years ago, and he served his time. He did his punishment, and I think it's one of those ones now. He's got that experience head on his shoulders. You can't retrospectively pull things back and change the goalpost 4 or 5 years down the line. So I think that's a really good call. I think it will really add a bit of stability to the team.
I agree with you, and I also think too, Hads, and you know, you're probably mixing with all the right cricket circles, but you know, anything that I see and read across social media, that you know, the public are very warm about wanting Steve Smith back in a strong leadership role, and I think as vice captain that would be absolutely perfect. And I agree with you. I think Cummins is the pick. And those two together, and then, you know, playing behind the stumps, I mean, it adds a lot of leadership and quality to that team into the start of the Ashes series, doesn't it?
Yeah, the interesting thing with Steve coming back into a leadership role, I think he'll be a better leader now. What he went through with the South African situation, how he came back and performed last Ashes under pressure, he's a world-class batter. I think now Steve Smith will be a better leader. He was always a really good tactical captain, but there's two sides of leadership. Yes, on the field, but also been a leader of men off the field. And I think that's where he'll grow the most. And I think that'll be a really important decision when they're coming down to the vice captain. So I think he's grown a lot in that respect. Another thing, though, also is just Steve Smith. It's a good way to get him into vice captain, because he might not want leadership. He might get back into it and think, you know what, I actually don't want this anymore. I'm just going to want to go back after South Africa, all the pressure's there. I just want to bat. I just want to watch the ball, hit the ball. And this is another good way to lead him into, to see if he really wants that leadership role again.
Yeah, very good point. And I think the batting lineup's pretty well selected, other than a couple of key points. Who's you putting at the top of the order, Brad? Are you going with Usman, or are you going Marcus Harris?
Well, I think George Bailey's select has come out and said they want to give Harris an extended run. And I like what Harris has done over the last 12 months. He had some technical things he needed to work on in his game. He went over to England. He did well with the swinging ball over there and fixed some things up, which is a really good sign of his maturity and how much he wants to get better at the top of the order. I think they'll go with him to partner Warner. I think Khawaja will bat at 5. I don't think you bring a 35-year-old into the squad if you're not going to play him. I think he'll offer a lot of stability there. He's been batting 4 for Queensland, and he's got a great record at home. So I think Khawaja will slot in at 5.
Nice to see him hitting some runs and hitting the ball so well too, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. He's one thing about Usman. He's been a class player in Australian conditions. He plays these conditions really well, and he's at the age in his career now where he's just had a baby. He's pretty settled off the field, and he may have thought this chance would never come. So he could be a really dangerous beast coming this Ashes campaign. Clear head, going at number 5. He's a mature head, and you need that around a couple of young kids in green behind him. So I think, as I said before, I don't think they would have brought him into the squad if they weren't going to play him.
Yeah, and that's a very good call. And the thing I've found sort of very interesting over the last couple of weeks is, with all of this uncertainty around the Aussie side, the betting markets have actually just remained very, very solid. I know we've spoken plenty of times, Gerard, about the Aussies being very short, and I sort of thought this might have been the catalyst to push the price out. But Australia's still $1.33 to win the series, England $5, the drawn series $8.50. The boys have just gone and stuck a stack of markets up in the last 24 hours, actually, for everything Ashes related. So it's really getting to that time. The first test is an interesting market as well. $1.74 the Aussies, $3.35 England, and $5 the draw. So there has been a bit of rain around here the last little bit, but obviously by that it seems like the weather's going to be okay. But what's your thoughts, Gerard? I know you've always got an opinion on the market. What's your sort of thoughts on that? Do you think it's going to drift out further, or where do you think the market's going to settle?
Well, I don't. As I've said over recent weeks, I mean, I just think Australia are way too short. I mean, when we first touched on this about 4 or 5 weeks ago, they were $1.24. Well, the last couple of weeks they've been around that $1.33, $1.34 mark. And you're right. I mean, it's amazing. It was a week ago before all of this drama unfolded. They were $1.33. Hasn't moved. I mean, there's clearly a lot of local support around that. I mean, I think Australia are deserved favourites at home, but I certainly think that price is way too short. And that first test is going to be such a scene setter for the rest of the series, isn't it? I mean, Brad, you want to go into that. I mean, you'd like to win the toss on the first morning, set the game up the way you want, get yourself in a strong position, and then try and leverage off that into the rest of the series, especially an Ashes series. I'd love to see Australia batting on day one.
Yeah, the first test's huge. It's always the biggest event of the summer, the first test. You need a result in that first test. It changes the style of play you play for the rest of the series. You don't want to be playing behind the game for the rest of the series and making selections influence what the series result is. But I understand why Australia are favourite. I think the interesting thing is that India have played 10 test matches since Australia have played their last. So we haven't played a lot of test cricket since we lost to India at the Gabba. England have been playing a lot. They've got an inexperienced batting order, which will be interesting. But the Ben Stokes factor to me is huge.
Yeah.
Not just his with the ball and the bat, but his presence in the change room. He's one of those players that make plays around him better. He loves beating Australia. He gets in the contest. And he's one of those guys that, follow me. This is what I'm going to do. And he brings players along. So that factor is going to play a huge part in the series with the confidence gives the rest of the group because, the captain of the opposition, Australia, are going to target.
And that's where that market move was. Australia somewhere around $1.24 before Stokes then was announced as coming. And I love some of his social media. There's nice little videos of him packing his gear and then the bag sitting at the airport and just constantly sending the message and winding up the English and the Army Barmy behind him. And you're right. I mean, the man has so much presence about him, but he also has that key influence where, within half an hour, he can just change a game with the bat or with the ball and then bring everybody else with him.
Yeah, you remember the test match at Leeds where he got that great 100 and got England over the line? Mate, everyone talks about how well he batted. What people forget a lot about, he bowled for one session. He bowled for 2 hours straight to get England back into that game. He was exhausted. He had to come out and bat that night. He survived. Then the next day, moved the game forward. But you could just see when all the England guys' shoulders went down, Stokes went, no, we can win this game. Just someone come with me. Yes. I'm going to take control of this game. So he bowled the whole session straight. He could barely walk. He had blood coming out of his boot. But that's the sort of characters you want in an Ashes campaign. So he's a big factor for England.
I agree. Now, we're going to have to move off for cricket very shortly because this is your edition, Brad. This is your Steve Smith moment, vice captain, to see if you can take Jimmy's spot on the NFL side of things. So we're going to have to move to that shortly. But what I want to do, we have a little charity segment here where we put some little charity bets on for Pass It On clothing. So I think channeling the great Pigeon McGrath, maybe we should all select a series betting option for the Ashes, what we think the series score is going to be, because the favourite's $6.31. Gerard, have you got a opinion on that? Where do you feel the series is going to finish up?
I certainly think Australia to win. Trying to pick the score, I might come back to that one, but I'm certainly with Australia winning the series. I'm not going with any outright bet because I certainly think that's way too short.
I've done well here. I've given everyone a whole 15 seconds notice on this question, so I might lead the charge. I'm going to say I don't think there's going to be many drawn matches in this series. I think there's going to be I think the bowling attacks probably look the dominant side of the ball for both teams. So I'm going to go very close series. I'm going to take Australia 3-2, $8. I'm going to stick $100 on that for Passing On clothing. Brad, have you got an opinion there?
Yeah, I think rain's going to play some part in one of the test matches. I'm going to say Australia 3-1.
3-1, $6 favourite option. So there we go. We're both on the Aussie side, very patriotic, which is good. And
why don't I go wide and go Australia 3-0?
3-0, and that's at $14. So we'll put $100 on each of those for passing on clothing. If we can get a result, if Australia can get to 3 tests early, then we're locked in with all of those options. So that sounds like a good play. So we'll do that now. And yeah, can't wait for the series. Obviously, only a couple of weeks away, and going to be very exciting for all cricket fans out there. There's been a lot of chat in the last couple of weeks, and whilst it probably hasn't been the most positive news, I think it's great to have cricket, back in the summer after that dominant T20 win. So really good to see. And now let's move on to NFL, because it's been a very interesting fortnight where there's been a lot of outsiders. There's been a lot of changes in the top of the order in terms of who's favourite for the Super Bowl, who's favourite for the MVP. At the moment now, Tampa Bay have gone into $7 favourites to win the Super Bowl. Kansas City, they were long gone a month ago, and now they're into second pick at $8. The Rams $9.50, Arizona $9.50, Buffalo $10. It's been a changing leaderboard up the top. Gerard, what did you make of the week just gone?
Well, Tristan, it's like spinning the chocolate wheel every week now, coming up with the odds for the Super Bowl, isn't it? I mean, a week ago, all of a sudden the Bills were at the top of the market, and everybody's expecting that they go into last weekend and come up with a win. Well, they absolutely get dusted up by the Colts, and the Colts started the week at minus 10.5 point underdogs to then come out and win as they did. And absolutely whacked the Bills, and the Bills were certainly very disappointing. And the Colts, they've been a little bit hot and cold, but to find some of that attacking form that they did, all of a sudden the Buccaneers get back on the right track. They win. Now they're top of the market. Well, that means that you probably want to lay them at some stage over the next couple of weeks. And it's just been a big week, hasn't it? I mean, there's news everywhere. All of a sudden there's leaks this week about Bears coach Matt Nagy, who's been under the microscope for so long. News that he supposedly will be sacked at some stage over the next week, and then denials. But all of a sudden, a meeting that he was supposed to have had with key management and the owner was cancelled. Then team meetings were cancelled. I mean, it certainly looks to be blood in the water there. And then over at the New York Giants, they sacked their offensive coordinator, Jason Garrett, who comes from a pedigree of being previously the Cowboys head coach. And there's been a lot of internal drama at the Giants over his original appointment and the fact that he had a very close relationship to the ownership of that franchise. Well, all of a sudden, the head coach has got his way. I mean, they have just been absolutely atrocious. They would not know how to score a touchdown at the moment. So there's lots happening. And then we go into the big Thanksgiving week. So Jimmy and his family are over there feeding their face this week. All of a sudden, into Thursday, Thanksgiving, we've got 3 big games, which thankfully is on here on a Friday. I mean, an absolute fill up for you tomorrow with football everywhere, Tristan. You've got the Bears and the Lions starting at somewhere around 3 a.m. in the morning. I mean, can the Lions finally win a game? They get their chance, don't they? Then we've got Hazard's Raiders up against the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, the Raiders have been very disappointing, 5-5. The Cowboys very warm favourites, but coming off a couple of losses, I mean, it looks like a get-right situation, but very warm favourites. And then we get the Bills and the Saints to finish the day. I mean, everybody's going to be kicking back on Thanksgiving. Big feed at lunchtime, 3 games of football into the evening. Then they have a couple of days off, and we get the full slate on Sunday. I guess the other key points out of the weekend, the Chiefs won again, but what I did like there, Tristan, was that their defence was very strong, and it wasn't just a reliance on Patrick Mahomes throwing the football. The Titans, wow, we didn't see that loss coming. They were 11-point favourites against the hapless Houston Texans. And the Texans led bang, bang, bang with 3 touchdowns very early and went away as clear winners. That's the upset of the season. And what about the Seahawks? We touched on them last week. I mean, that pressure is building on Pete Carroll. He's had an amazing career, but at 70, 71, maybe this might be the swan song. And his post-match press conference and then the next day press conference, the man just looked bewildered. He didn't really have any answers for the media. So there's a lot happening. The seating's changed a little bit, but like I said before, I think you can spin that wheel next week. I still think my long-term pick around the Green Bay Packers, I'm sure that Rodgers gets better in the weeks to come. They were our bet last week. We got beat on the last play of the game, but that's just the way the NFL can roll at the moment. So looking for a best bet this weekend. I thought there are a couple that I did like. Away from tomorrow's feast, I thought Washington, they just keep improving at the moment. They started the week 2.5 underdogs. Now they're 1 point favourites. I think that gets back to -2.5, if not 3 by game time. They play that hapless Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are on the road. I just think Washington are way too strong there, and I thought -1 was very, very generous. And then the other game, Jimmy went to that big game last weekend, the Steelers and the Chargers. It was just like a touchdown and points feast, wasn't it? 80 points. Well, I don't think there's much defence in that, and I don't like Pittsburgh at the moment. I think they're formed very ordinary. They go to Cincinnati. They play the Bengals. I think the Bengals -3.5. I think they absolutely lap this and cover that very comfortably. So let's go for those as the 2 bets of the week. Washington -1, Cincinnati -3.5. We'll have bets on those and try and pick up some coin, and maybe we can donate some of that to Jimmy's mobile bill when he gets back.
I think that sounds like a great plan. I'm a little bit worried about the messages we might be receiving at about lunchtime our time after 3 big games of NFL, where my Detroit, as you say, go in as underdogs, but their closest chance of winning, or their best chance of winning, against Chicago, where they're 226. But I think the game everyone will have their eyes on, Hads, and you might be able to give us a bit of a rundown, is the Vegas Raiders. I think their season has probably put the last 2 weeks of Australian cricket to shame in terms of media exposure and storylines and all this sort of stuff. So it's been a tough old season for them, but they've still been putting up a pretty good record. So what's drawn you to the Raiders? Where does that come from?
Mate, I tell you, they've been awful coming off the bye. They're 5-5, but to me, it's a Jimmy Smith factor. I think Jimmy Smith can slow anything down. So I'm going to back the Raiders. I think with him over there, he can play a huge presence on holding the Cowboys back. So, yeah, big Thanksgiving games. There's been times that Cowboys haven't come up, eaten too much turkey. So, mate, I think the Raiders can get it done with the Jimmy Smith factor over there, slowing the Cowboys down.
I think with the way the NFL season has been playing out the last few weeks, I think that is as good as any form line you can draw. So I reckon that might be the play. So yeah, we got a big. This is one of the biggest weekends of the year NFL wise, and as Gerard touched on, we've got two key games there to play. We've got the Cincinnati -3.5 and Washington -1 flat. As you touched on, there's been a big move already there. Seattle look in a lot of trouble, and they might be looking towards next season.
Well, lastly, the 2 big games that round out Sunday that are going to take a lot of focus. We've got the Bucks on the road to play the Colts. So the Colts come out of that big win last weekend. The Bucks got themselves back on the road. That's a great matchup. We've got the Buccaneers at -3 favourites. I don't know. The Colts at home have got a very good record there. That's a great game. And around the same time, we've also got the Titans bouncing off that surprise loss, going to New England to play the Patriots, who right now are on a bit of a roll, and they get their chance at home and -6.5 favourites. I thought that's a very warm position, but that coach, good old Bill Belichick, he's just an absolute master, isn't he? He's turning that young rookie kid who was 5th out of the draft into a player week after week, and they're just on a lovely roll at the moment, the Pats.
Yeah, well, just an interesting market to touch on as you refer to both those games. I was just having a look at the the AFC South market, where the Titans are 105, very warm favourites, but this weekend's very pivotal there. The Colts are $8.25. So if the Colts could cause an upset against Tampa and maybe New England roll through that, it will be a very different looking market, that one, in a week's time. So Tennessee have been overachieving all year. I think they've got a lot about them, but we saw what happened there last week. That maybe their sort of form line's coming back to the mean a little bit, and if that continues this week, that 8.25 certainly won't be there next week.
Well, the Pats have got a tough draw to run home toward the finals, but the thing is that they're in winning form. They've all of a sudden bounced up to be number 3 seed in the AFC. If they can maintain that position or even improve. Gee, can you imagine the public going into a semi-final series with all of a sudden the Pats at a decent seating, and they'll be jumping out of trees.
Yeah, no, they certainly will. Now let's move on to racing, where we've got a big weekend coming up. We've got the Zipping Classic, the traditional Sandown meeting, which is now being run at Caulfield for whatever reason that's happening, but that's racing at the moment. So we've got the big Caulfield card on the agenda. We've got the big meeting over there at Ascot, where it's the Winterbottom Stakes headlining the card. Obviously, no horses, which Peter Moody made it very well known, his thoughts on the fact no interstate horses are allowed to travel in. But there's been a lot of pikey saluted, very short price favourites winning the features so far. So we've got a big day of racing, but has anyone got any tips that they want to touch on the weekend coming up?
Tristan, I'm surprised you didn't have your pink and white hat on this morning. I mean, you would have absolutely got bent over last Saturday, wouldn't you? Well, Pikey's just lining them up, going into the last, and his ride in the last has been $3.20 into $1.90 on the day, and then gets held up. God has chosen, and just gets beat on the line. I mean, that probably got something back for you. I'm not sure if you had Chinese on Saturday night, but Perth would have been a bit of a wipeout.
Yeah, well, a quick little story on that. I normally work the Saturday evenings, but my daughter had her last week at school, so we had a parent dinner that evening, and I left the office in reasonably good spirits. We'd dug out of a big hole, and we'd finished our after the Eastern Seaboard races. We were about square for the day. I checked in one race to go at Ascot and almost fell off the chair. The phone almost went out the window. I thought, this isn't a good looking last hour. So, but yeah, as you say, we got a little bit back on that last race, but certainly. There were a lot of multis running through all the pikey supported horses. It's been the case the last few weeks at Ascot, actually. He's been in a rich vein of form. So, Ascot racing certainly hasn't been, headlining the card at our end. But, yeah, we'll see. We'll bounce back up with the Winterbottom. Elite Street's been in great form. It's been a couple of ordinary results on its 3 wins so far this campaign. But Brad Wheeler on board, 240 out to 270. There is a bit of support for some runners away from it on the weekend here coming up.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an upset there. I think Elite Street will get beaten. I'm going to go Will Chino, number 16. Is that going for 6 straight wins? I know Pikey on Graceful Girl. He powered home the other day behind Elite Street, but I'm going to go Will Chino.
Well, it's been very well backed, actually. $6 into $4.40. So the punters have certainly found it. And as you say, you can't beat winning form out of barrier 1. Parnham on board is going to give it a really good sit. So if Elite Street out of barrier 10, I know it's been dominant, but if it finds a little bit of trouble, I think the market might see those 2 horses a bit close together once the race jumps.
Well, Pikey would nearly need to pick Graceful Girl up and carry it, wouldn't he, from barrier 18? He'll be going through the car park looking for a run as they straighten. So I think you're right. Barrier 1 gets all the favours, and you'd think that 440 certainly shortens. And, Elite Street, it's got some lovely form on the board, but, it's got 58.5. It also comes from gate 10. It's not the softness of draws, is it? I thought my bet for the day, let's go back to Caulfield. It is the big Zipping Classic day. What about Spanish Moon? There's a bit of a story, isn't there, Tristan? But, the English import ran 3rd in the Cup. We actually talked about it in a week leading up to the Cup because it was, had such beautiful staying form around the best stayer in the world in Stradivarius in the UK. Now they've left it here. That big ownership group have picked it up. It's with the Moody stable, and now $1.50 favourite for the Zipping Classic. So it probably just picks up prize money for fun on Saturday. There's certainly no money to be made around $1.50 favourite. I thought a bet that might be at a little bit of a price was race 6, number 6, Cardinal Gem, around $6.50 with you at the moment. I must say, Tristan, that Bob offering, there we made some nice money last weekend on the back of that, and we talked about it last week on the podcast. Our first winner, which was Dragonstone, into the early morning, and by lunchtime, I think it was somewhere around the $2.10 favourite. Because we're on at Bob, we ended up with the best fluck, which was $2.50, so we got a great result there. And then Jimmy's winner of the big feature, we got $4.80. How? We got $4.80 when it had such lovely form in winning the gong. So let's go with the Bob again. $6.50 or better on Saturday. Cardinal Gem comes from the astute Graham Begg stable. It's got his key rider and Jordan Childs on board. Only lightly raced. I really liked its run last start over 1400 at Flemington. From a wide gate, they went back. It was last on the turn, 16th of 16 runners. came home very strongly to finish fourth. His closing sectionals, and I thought on the wrong part of the track, were very strong. So we'll go with that a little bit wide, $6.50, see if we can pick up some money for Pass It On Clothing. And as we do from week to week, Brad, we're just going to throw you in the deep end here, mate. We need a winner from you for Saturday as well.
And the Zipping Classic, I know Spanish Mission, it all looks beautiful and should win the game, but I don't mind warning with Oliver and Freeman together. I reckon that can cause an upset there. But my best of the day, I'm going to throw a bit of a long shot in Caulfield Race 8, number 2, Patrick Payne's Defibrillate. I think it's 3 from 4 at this track. It's unbeaten over this trip. It's paying $15. So, it's worth a little go there.
Yeah, well, it's actually $18. TopSport 19 into 18 Defibrillate, and the favourite in the race, Our Playboy. It was one I really thought was a big chance in the Cranbourne Cup, but just looks like it finds a little bit of trouble, that horse. So yeah, it's very short in the market. So if it out of barrier 1 doesn't get the run that I think punters are expecting, there might be a little bit of value to be had. So Defibrillate 19 into 18, sort of at the end of the carnival, these sort of races, they're always right for the picking for a horse that's been just scooting under the radar. And on that note, I've got a little share in a horse at Caulfield, race 2, number 4, Accountability. We've mentioned it a couple of times on this show, and it's an out-and-out stayer. It gets to the 3,200 running the Sandown Cup at Caulfield, but we know it's going to stay the trip. It's had really, really good form, and I just think it gets its chance here. Barrier 1, Brett Pepperell on board, 54 kilos. I think it's going to be very, very tough to beat. So you might be able to anchor a few multis through that. Race 2, number 4, Accountability. So we've got a few little options there for Pass It On Clothing. Plenty of money in the kick. We've got a few horse racing bets, a few NFL bets, and we've all gone now pick the score for the Ashes. So I think it's been a very constructive, very efficient program here today, boys. I don't know what Jimmy's going to do when he comes back. He's got a lot of work to make up.
I'll tell you what, Tristan, if Brad can get an $18 result into the weekend, we'll be turning Jimmy's mobile account off, and we'll be just changing tune, I think. As Jimmy said last week, a week's a long time in media, and you don't go on holidays.
I think that's exactly right. So no, it's I've really enjoyed it today, guys. Thanks everyone for chiming in. Ads, thanks for jumping in and having a chat to us. And Gerard, as always, thanks for everything you've brought forward. So looking forward to seeing how these bets go over the weekend, and see if we can make some money for Pass It On Clothing. We'll
get this out on social media. We'll get all the fans listening, and who knows, out of all of that, we might even get Brad onto Twitter someday.
Mate, I've just introduced myself to Instagram. So, mate, Twitter, my wife doesn't trust me. I'm a bad sleeper, and I could say anything at 1 o'clock in the morning. So, Bradley, stay away.
Have a great week, gentlemen.
See you, boys.
See you guys.